One of the most important decisions in FPV is what radio to buy. A lot of people, if you're starting out, you hear from everyone that the most important purchase is your radio. And that's true for a lot of reasons. First of all, the toy grade radios out there, they just don't have the same resolution on the sticks. It's more like jumping from 10, 20, 30, 40. Some people say it's even like 0, 50, 100, versus a much smoother level of control that you get from higher quality hobby grade radios. And the radio is also one of the most important purchases because newbies tend to focus on what quad to buy, not realizing that their first quad is not going to last very long. Their radio is. And so for a lot of reasons, your first radio is an important choice, or if you already have a radio and you want to switch to a different one, that's another very important choice. So let's cover pretty much all the radios out there and some key objective differences between them and some of the subjective ones as well. If you're starting out, I guess I would tell you that some of the first things you should decide on are what protocol and what form factor you would like. I'm going to go into protocols later because realistically at this point you can get most protocols on most radios. So it's a matter of cost and convenience, and this radio is really going to focus on the best aspects of each and not really what the cheapest is and whatnot. You can make your own decision what is a better value. Secondly, a big decision is form factor and portability. This is huge compared to this. You might feel this is more comfortable in your hands to be holding a radio like a Xbox controller. And beyond, ergonomics, the portability matters. You might have a situation where with a radio like this, you can fly every day, but with one like this, you can't. So that's one of the things that's going to matter to you. And I'm not going to be able to make that decision for you, but I will tell you some reasons I have switched between all of these radios and why. And the biggest one, let's get right down to it. It is gimbal throw. Okay, your stick throw here. And let's talk about why. A lot of the rest is preference, and I'll talk about some of the preferences and how that might affect you. But in terms of your ability to fly and what actually affects flight characteristics and your flight performance, the more stick movement you have to control 0 to 100, the more fine-tuned control you have. So fundamentally, if you notice, look at the size of these gimbals here compared to these. You have a lot less throw. That gives you less precision, and I'll talk about how that affects different flight styles and why that might matter to you. But let's first go over that very important distinction. So let's say you're coming from one of these big radios. They're all about the same in terms of the gimbal size. I think it's about 46.5 millimeters for the throw. Okay, and then if you look at this one here, I believe this is about 79 something like that percent of this gimbal throw. Okay, so you're losing some resolution when you move to a smaller radio like this. This gimbal here has fundamentally, objectively, obviously what you prefer is subjective, but this fundamentally has less fine-tuned control of the movement. This Tango 2 radio, which I absolutely loved, I wanted to make it my only radio. Now it's my carry everyday radio, but not my racing radio, and I'll talk about that right now. This is the Pro version with the sticks that pop out, which are really cool. One thing I would say is make sure you did actually pop them back in right before you fly. I have found situations where I'm flying and this is actually out, and then in the middle of the flight it goes back in like that. So just that would be the only thing I'd say about that. Check your sticks. It has this neat way for the antenna to use kind of as a stand, and the switches, this is going to be a matter of taste here. switches like this versus like this. And, that'll be up to you what you prefer, okay? And it's definitely will take some getting used to. I think of all the things in a radio, the muscle memory for arming and disarming is one of the strongest. But anyway, when the Tango 2 came out, I switched to it immediately for my sim practice, and the thing, I had already owned an Xlite radio before, and I loved it for micro quads. I loved it for tiny whoops, especially because with tiny whoops you're basically going from 0 to 100 a lot more, and the fine-tuned stuff isn't happening as much. So I love this for tiny whoops, but I could never fly a 5-inch quad or simulate with this anywhere near as I could with a full-size radio. But when the Tango 2 came out, they claimed it had full-size gimbals, which, I guess there's no standard gimbal size out there. I'm not going to knock them. I really like this product, but this is slightly smaller. I think it's something like 87%. Let me look up some sizes here. So, let's go over that. Okay, so the gimbal throw on the full-size radios is about 46.5 millimeters. On the Tango, it is Tango 2. It is approximately 40.5. I see different people saying different things online. I'm not actually measuring them here. I'm looking up what all the other reviews and people say. And on the Xlite, it's 36.5 millimeters. So essentially, when you're going from a full-size radio to a Tango, you're getting 87% of the throw. And when you go from a full size to Xlite, you're getting 79. Okay, so this was a huge deciding factor for me. I much prefer this type of a radio. There's no reason really for a radio to be this big. When you open it up, it's mostly empty. But full-size gimbals really did matter. And so when I, had the Xlite, I said, I love this thing. I'm just sorry that the gimbals, they're just not big enough. One thing you can do, by the way, I put longer stick ends on the Xlite here, and that's something that on any radio makes a difference to your throw. Obviously, if it's shorter, there's less throw. The longer there is, the stick is, there's more movement. See, so as I was talking about, you can put longer stick ends on these on almost any radio, and especially on ones with smaller ones like the Xlite, it makes a world of a difference. You get longer stick throw. If it was real short, smaller movement. Imagine if it were tall, you'd have to move a lot further. So adjusting that is something I recommend on any of your radios to tune that to the feel that you want. The Xlite was almost perfect for me, except it was too small. I'm also a hybrid, which in this case what I mean is that I use pinch for throttle, and I use thumbing on the right side here. And to quickly explain why I do this, it's really because I feel like, the throttle is what you move the most, and if you have some yaw mixed into it, that can be a little problematic. On the right side, I like just thumbing because it's I can get anywhere faster with my thumbs. So I kind of feel like thumbing is a little bit more stable. Pinching is a little bit more stable than thumbing, and I want that extra bit of stability on my throttle and my yaw versus on pitch and roll, where full deflection, full freedom feels a lot better to me. That's a matter of preference, but in terms of ergonomics, this is objectively harder to use as a pinching radio because it feels really nice to grip if you're a thumber. You can really hold on really well. That feels really good. But if you're pinching like I do on this, the side of your hand is just floating off on the side here. Because unlike the big radios, you don't have something to grab onto. So when the Tango 2 came out, I was really stoked because the design, the form factor of this is A lot of people don't realize how hard it is to get things like this right, and this is very close to perfect. It doesn't feel as nice, and the ends of it here don't feel as nice in your hand. It kind of squeezes out. You don't have as firm of a grip compared to the Xlite on the bottom part, but on the top part, you can support your hands, you can thumb, you can pinch, you can pretty much fly how you fly with a big radio. So they made the claim that they have full-size gimbals. That's not exactly what I would consider true. It's close enough though, and it really does feel similar enough that for most people other than extremely high level freestyle pilots and maybe racing pilots, or maybe it's not high level, it's how sensitive you are to your equipment and how much you care about your consistency. When this came out, I really wanted to use it. I started using it at that point in the pandemic, we didn't have any live races, so I started using it as my main radio for simulating. And day one, unlike with the Xlite, I could fly, racing high speed without feeling like it was a huge adaptation. One thing I did was I lowered my rates a little bit, mainly because of the smaller stick throw. Also, for the first time, I ended up putting deadband on the radio. I used 3 deadband on all my quads because some random whoops will have a little jitter, micros, and 3 is enough to fix it. And I just put that on all my quads so that they all fly the same. Even after I calibrated the Tango 2, which it had terrible calibration software, initially people were having a lot of problems with it, but I got a lot better. But even after calibrating them, I was getting a little jitter. So I ended up putting 3 deadband on my radio, and that made me perfectly happy with that. Some other day I will make a tutorial on how to do that if you don't know how to. So anyway, when this came out, I really wanted it to be my radio. I was making my whoops, crossfire whoops, even if it weighed a little bit more. I was getting ready for this to be my one and only radio. And I started using it for sim races. I still kept winning my local races, so it wasn't terrible. But I was just slightly worse, and it wasn't just because I was used to the other one. It was, I even tried dramatically different rates on both the larger and the radios and the Tango, and I just missed the resolution fundamentally. So yeah, this radio here with maybe slightly recessed gimbals and just slightly more throw would be the absolutely perfect radio for me. But they did throw on, I have here, as you can see, the multi-protocol mod. It makes it a lot less sleek, I will say that. It was obviously not designed for this. I'll go ahead and put it on there so you can see what it looks like. Here, give me a second. And so there you go. And now I can fly pretty much anything on this, including D8, which even with my multi-protocol mod on this, the Xlite Pro, the new Access radios, I was having problems with. So that's amazing. I love it. But check out what, one of the things I love about this sleek radio that folds into my travel bags that are smaller than my, drone racing bags is now, it's kind of resting on the multi-protocol module. If you want, they're smaller antennas, and you can do different things with the antenna. But if you want to use this as a stand, it's still not really there anymore. So some of the cooler, niceties about the ergonomics you lose with the module. You can obviously take it off, and with just the module mod, it's not that bad. But anyway, those are minor things. I'm not going to let that stop me from enjoying the hell out of this radio. This will be kind of my everyday carry radio. Anything I fly other than racing, I do on this radio. Anything I carry. And one of the things that's amazing, that I love, that I didn't know until recently, and maybe some of you don't know, is that with Crossfire, they have multi-bind, which means, I can have all my quads bound to all of my Crossfire compatible radios. So on my full-size radio with a Crossfire module, or the Tango, whichever radio I turn on is just bound to my quads, all my Crossfire quads, that is. So let's do a quick comparison to what the multi-protocol module looks like on the Xlite. Xlites and Pro, in this case the Pro. As you can see, you know, there's a lot more, it's a lot more recessed because the batteries are inside here. And when you put it down, you know, it still sits like normal. You know, and so in terms of the multi-protocol module, this is definitely a little bit nicer. You even get a little cover if you want to not use it, which would have been really nice for the Crossfire one. I'm sure someone will come up with some printed one like that, and I'll show you guys what. Here you can even put the brand new Crossfire modules on an Xlite now without having to do those huge ugly hacks. So last thing I want to talk about for gimbals, and which is this is really all about, I'm saying, you know, choose your radio based off of the you know, whether you want what form factor you want. Choose your radio based off of what protocols you want, or, you know, spend the extra on having multi-protocol and then not have to worry about that. But then lastly, more than, you know, after how it feels in your hand, it's gimbal throw, you know, that's what it is. So I'm going to talk about something else real briefly about gimbal throw here, okay? So on these, this is actually one of my newer radios I'm not using yet. This is my current radio that I race with, that I'm taking to champs, with a very big Crossfire module on there. But I don't know if you can notice here, but this thing here does not have, these two gimbals are the same. This thing here has an R there. What does that mean? It's a race gimbal, is what they call it. It's really pretty much exactly the same as this Hall gimbal over here. But, oh, I should explain about Hall gimbals real briefly, but I'll get to that. So, but the difference is there's less throw on vertical side. So I actually use it just on the left side. I know some pilots that use it on both. I like this to be more symmetrical. It doesn't really matter, you can adjust to that, but basically I don't really have a problem reaching the top here. Some pilots use this because they think that they'll make them faster of a racer, you know, they're less time to get to full throttle. That's kind of dumb, doesn't really make a difference. I'm not going to say it's dumb. I mean, different people might have different ways to think about things, and they may have some validity to it. So, but for me, since I'm hybrid pinching over here on the full-size radio, full-size gimbal on this radio, my fingers were hitting the top a bit sometimes and preventing me from hitting full throttle smoothly unless I held it just right. And it was a little bit kind of awkward to get to the bottom of the throttle, which, you know, in some ways is a good thing in racing. You don't want to actually go to the bottom of your throttle almost ever. You know, so anyway, last thing, okay, so about Hall gimbals, there's different types of gimbals. Some of them wear out faster than others. To put it real simple, Hall gimbals are more sensitive and better, and they wear out far less quickly than non-Hall gimbals. So in general, you're going to want that. And on a last note, I'm going to talk about big radios that are not this particular big radio. And the reason why I've not brought out a QX7, Radio Master, any of these many other ones out there is because of something really simple. There's Futaba. Okay, another interruption, this time because my GoPro battery ran out. Once again, bad production values. Hopefully good information if you don't have access to actually play with every single radio out there. So, like I was saying, I haven't brought out all the other radios in this class, this, call it the big radio class. And that's because for what I'm talking about today about the resolution of gimbals, a lot of that doesn't really matter. You'll have different values, different price points, but the main thing you should care about is the ergonomics of the radio. There are better radios out there than this in terms of fit and finish. If I could use the Futaba radios, I would. Their gimbals are a little bit higher on the radio, and it just doesn't feel right to me right now. So when choosing between any of these radios of this size, for the most part, that's what you're going to have to decide on, the how it feels in your hand, and you're only going to be able to tell when you have one. Some of them have some differences in their gimbals. You can look those up. I haven't brought a lot of them out here because other than the Taranis radios, a lot of them come and go. The designs change every few months for some of these. I think they're really good value, but I don't really have any strong opinions about the ergonomics compared to a radio like this. I will, however, say that I really support them for not being anti-customer the way Taranis is with their Access radios, and for their multi-protocol support and some of the things like Radio Master radios, and that's a pro customer move. Hopefully this was somewhat helpful. Like I said, my main review was trying to explain the different sizes of the gimbals between these radios and the effect that had on flying. And maybe that will help some of you decide your radios in the future.